Hello, it's good to see you again. Welcome back. The last time we got together, we talked about some events that led up to a very important time in the history of art. I gave you some new words and we talked about some ideas. Actually, they were some old ideas on how to view art. But I also introduced you to a very special friend of mine. His name is Gatsby, and I'd like to see if he's in. Gatsby, are you in there? Hello?
I'm right here, Miss Beth. Hey, students.
Hey, what are you doing behind your paint can?
I was just out for a jog.
How do you jog on a round art stool?
Well, I do get kind of tired running in circles. Hey, I've got an idea. Would you mind giving the stool a little spin?
Are you sure? I mean, what if you fall down? Or worse yet, what if you fall off?
Don't worry, Miss Beth. I'm just a drop of paint. The worst that can happen is I'll splatter everywhere, and someone will mistake me for Jackson Pollock's masterpiece.
I guess that's a good way of looking at it. Okay, here goes.
I'm ready. Perfect. This sure beats running in circles. Whoa! Whoa!
Gatsby, are you okay?
Sure. Never better.
Perhaps you need to go lie down in your paint can.
Oh, I'll be all right. Plus, I don't want to miss out on the rest of the story about how the salon got all discombobulated.
I think the word you're looking for is discombobulated.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, in fact, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But first, I wanted to see if maybe we could do a review and see what you can remember from the last time we got together. In fact, I'll ask you some questions, and if you don't know the answer, you can even ask some of the students.
Awesome. Bring it on.
Okay, first question is this. Do you know the name of the art period that we're about to study? I know it was a long word, but I'll give you a hint. It starts with the letter I.
Impress. It was such a long word. Can I have my friends to help?
Sure.
Do you guys remember what the word was? Oh, yeah. Impressionist. Thanks, guys.
Very good. You did a good job. In fact, that's exactly right. Remember we talked about how there was a school. It had been going on for hundreds of years. And every year they would have an art show to kind of show off the kids' artwork that they had done that year. Well, in time, the school began to ask other people, other artists in the community to participate. And a lot of artwork began to come in. In fact, they didn't have room to even house all the artwork. So they decided to move it. They moved it into Paris, actually into a palace called the Louvre. And it was held in the Grand Salon. Well, because it was now being held in the Louvre, a lot of artists participated in it. In fact, they got so many pieces of artwork, they hung them from floor to ceiling. And still, the artwork kept coming in. They decided they were probably going to have to start picking pieces of artwork instead of just showing all the artwork. So they wound up getting a jury. It would be like getting some judges to come in and look at all the artwork. And they were to decide which ones were the best pieces for everyone to see. In fact, they had certain things they were looking for when they looked at the artwork. They had certain themes that they like to see in the pictures or in the sculpture. In fact, Gatsby, do you remember any of the themes?
I remember they liked pictures of people.
That's exactly right. Up-close pictures of people are called portraits. Can you think of anything else, students? Did someone mention Bible pictures or Bible themes? That's exactly right. There were other ones. Can you think of another one?
How about pictures of lands, towns, and rivers?
Yep, that's another one. The judges love pictures of landscapes, and there's even more.
I think I'm gonna need a little more help on this one. Does anyone know any other types? Yeah, pictures of wars and fruits and flowers.
That's exactly right. The judges love pictures of war and war heroes, and they always love the still lifes. You are super smart.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. It's my birthday. Oh, yeah.
That is one crazy little drop of paint. The salon was very popular, and people from all over Europe would come to see the exhibit. The judges made sure that they had picked sculptures and paintings that had the themes that we just talked about. Here's some pictures of them doing the judging. As you look at these, can you see how the judges would say that they liked a particular painting? Yeah, some would raise their hands, some would raise their walking sticks, and look, some even raised their umbrellas. The salon was convinced that the only good art was art that showed a lot of detail. It had to have the colors nicely blended, and of course, they didn't want to show any brush strokes. And then the things you mentioned earlier, those themes, that had to be in the artwork. In 1867, things began to change. And have I got a story for you.
It's story time!
In 1840, in the city of Paris, a little boy was born. His parents were so excited and they were so thankful to have a second son. They decided to name him Oscar Claude Monet.
That looks like it says Monette.
Well, actually, Gatsby, it's French. And in French, the E-T has a long A sound. So you pronounce it Monet.
Monet. Monet. Monet!
Anyway, Oscar was a fine boy. His dad ran a grocery store, and his mom stayed home with the boys. She would often read to them. She'd read poetry to them especially, and she loved to sing to them. More than anything, Oscar loved to be outside, and he loved to draw. When he was about 5 years old, the family moved from Paris to a little ocean town called Le Havre. Oscar especially loved this because he's by the ocean. What's not to love about being by the ocean? He would go out all day and play out by the seashore. He loved it. But of course, he also had to go to school. And unfortunately, he didn't really like school too terribly much. If he had to choose, he would rather be outside or drawing. In fact, there's a story about when he was about 15 years old. He was in class. Of course, he was probably bored and not paying attention. And throughout the day, on his paper, he would just doodle little pictures. Well, he thought, I wonder if I could draw my teacher. So he begins to draw a picture of his teacher. But he didn't draw it like we've studied before, like portraits. He actually did a caricature. That's like a cartoon. And so he began to draw a picture of his teacher. And he kind of did him with a big head and a big nose and crazy hair. He was doing it just to pass the time. But some of the kids sitting around him started to look over his shoulder. They were wondering what he was doing. And then they began to giggle. And once one started to giggle and another started to giggle, it was all over. The teacher found out. The teacher was not at all happy about the fact that Claude had interrupted class with these silly cartoons. The thing is, the students loved it. In fact, they would beg Oscar to draw pictures of them. He decided, I wonder if I could make a little money doing this. And so that's what he did. He began to charge them 10 francs in order to draw their caricature or their cartoon. And he started making pretty good money at school. He came up with another idea. I wonder if I could sell some of my cartoons or caricatures in a shop. He knew of a store in town. It was actually a frame shop, and he knew the owner. And so he began to draw cartoons and characters of the people in town, the mayor, the librarian, the baker. And he went and he asked the shop owner, could I hang these up in your window? Shop owner thought, sure, anything that would make people stop and look in the shop windows. And so Oscar began to show his little cartoons and characters in the window. He kind of wanted to see if people liked him. So he began to kind of watch as people would come down the sidewalk. Sure enough, they began to notice the little cartoons, and they began to giggle also. In fact, one day, as he was listening in on a crowd gathered around the frame shop window, he heard one person say, "Oh my goodness, That has got to be the mayor. Look at that crazy nose and that crazy hair. It looks just like him. I think I'm going to buy it. Claude began to get 20 francs for every caricature that he drew. The shop owner loved it because every week people would stop in to see the work that Oscar was doing, and then sometimes they would buy things from him. In fact, would you like to see some of the caricatures?
I do.
Okay then, let's take a look at them. Here's one that Oscar did. It was done of a man named Mario Uchard. It is a very typical caricature. Look how big the man's head is compared to his body. In fact, his head is almost as big as his body. Do you see that little eyepiece on his eye? That's called a spectacle. And look at that crazy hair. Here's another one. This one is a man named Leon Menchon. This one I love. Just look at how Oscar was able to do those curly side whiskers and that big curl right above his ears. His body is super small and his nose is super big. I want to show you another one, but I'm not going to tell you the name of this one yet. I want you to take a close look at it. Of course, it is a caricature. Look how ginormous the guy's head is, how big his nose is. But what's he doing? Can you tell what he has in his arm? It's a gun. And can you tell what he's sitting on? If you said a boat, you're right. And can you tell what's in the front of his boat? It's his little pet dog. This one's called A Hunter and His Dog on a Boat. And here's another one. This is called Man with a Big Cigar. I like this one. Oscar even added a little bit of red charcoal to this sketch. And look how huge his head is compared to his little skinny body. In fact, that cigar is about the same size as his leg. Here's another one. It's called Dandy with a Cigar. Dandy is another word for like a fancy man. And you can tell from looking at this guy's pretty fancy. You know, his head isn't as big as the other ones that we looked at. But look how far out his mouth is sticking. He acts like he really loves smoking cigars. And so Oscar was able to really capitalize on that and made it look like he is really huffing and puffing on that cigar. Here's another one. It's called Man Standing by Desk. Again, this is very much a typical caricature that Oscar loved to do. Great big head, a big nose, but look how teeny his mouth is. And can you see the wrinkles of kind of fat or flesh right behind his mouth? Of course, the farther down the body you go, the teenier it gets to where his feet are just tiny little dots almost. Here's another one. This is called The Man in the Small Hat. What's funny is in a caricature, his hat doesn't look all that small to me. He does have a very, very big nose. And again, his body tapers down to very, very small. Finally, I want to show you this one. This is a friend of Oscar's. His name was Henry Casanelli Rufus Crutinelli. It's a lot to say, I know. We're just going to call him Henry from here on out. Anyway, he does this caricature of Henry. His head is really big, but look how flat his hat is. It almost looked like that if he really drew his head, it wouldn't even fit inside that hat. Of course, he's a pipe smoker. You see that dangling out of his mouth, and you see his long mustache hanging down. His body gets smaller and smaller, but this one is a little different than the other ones because his feet are ginormous.
Miss Beth, sorry to interrupt,
yes.
but I saw something.
Yeah.
On the first few caricatures, Monet signed his name O. Monet.
Yeah, well, that's because his name is Oscar Monet, so he signed it O. Monet.
Well, the last few, he signed them Claude Monet. Are they the same Monets?
Actually, they are. And I'm actually kind of surprised you noticed that, Gatsby. Very good. His name was Oscar Claude Monet. But as he got older, instead of going by what his parents called him, which was Oscar, he began to want to be called by his middle name, and that was Claude. So actually, from here on out, I'm going to refer to him as Claude Monet. Claude was doing very well with his caricatures. One day, a gentleman was passing in front of the shop window, and he saw his caricatures. He walked in and talked to the shop owner about Claude and about his great drawings. The man's name was Eugene Baudin. He was actually a local artist, but he was quite well known. He asked the shop owner if he could somehow arrange a meeting with him and Claude Monet. And the shop owner said, no problem. When Claude found out about it, he was very excited. He's thinking, hey, this is a very famous artist, and he's wanting to talk to me about my caricature. So he was quick to have that meeting. The thing is, the meeting didn't quite go the way that Claude thought. See, Eugene Baudin saw something in Claude. He saw a real talent. And he felt like Claude was kind of wasting his time doing these caricatures and cartoons. So when he got together, he had a proposition for Claude. He said, young man, I think you're a great artist, but I think you could be an even greater artist, and I would like to be your teacher. Well, Claude didn't really know what he thought about that. In fact, he told Eugene, hey, listen, I've been selling my artwork now for several years. I'm actually making 20 francs per caricature. But Eugene tried to convince him, listen, you can't do that the rest of your life. You could go on to bigger and greater things. Claude said, I don't need anything bigger and greater. I'm fine. I don't need you to teach me anything. Well, sure enough, when they would pass each other on the street, Eugene would say again, hey, let me teach you. You can be an even better artist. Come on. Claude, of course, was like, no, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. Eugene just kept hounding him about it. And finally, Claude, in order to get Eugene Baudin just to be quiet, decided, I'll just go do one art lesson with him, let it be over, and I can get back to doing what I do. So he agreed to meet Eugene Baudin at his studio. The next day, Claude gathered up his easel and his paints, his brushes, and he goes over to Eugene Baudin's house. He knocks on the door, and Eugene opens the door, but he doesn't let him in. Claude said, excuse me, but I thought we were going to have an art lesson. You've been driving me crazy about this for months now. And Eugene, from behind closed doors, said, it's okay. Give me just a minute. I'll be there. Eugene grabbed up all of his art supplies, and he came out the front door and shut it. Claude's going, okay, we're having an art lesson, but we're not going in the studio. Eugene said, no. Come on, follow me. And so Eugene starts traipsing out of town. Claude was close on his heels. They walk and carry their stuff for quite some time. They come over a little hill, and they look down on the other side, and there's the ocean. And Eugene said, this is what we're going to paint. And Claude said, real artists don't paint outside. I mean, we need to be in a studio. Something's going to happen to our paints. Well, see, there was a new invention that came out. It was actually called the tube. You guys know it. You get toothpaste in it and all kinds of creams in it. Well, they had just come out with this invention called the tube. And paint was able to be stored in this airtight. So now artists were able to go outside and paint using their tube paint. They didn't have to stay in the studio anymore. Eugene said, it's okay. We're going to use this paint, and we're going to paint what you see. Well, remember me telling you that Claude loved being outside? He suddenly kind of started getting excited about this art lesson. In fact, Eugene had him look out over this ocean view, and he said, Claude, just paint what you see. The light, the colors, the rippling of the grasses and the rippling of the waves. Just paint what you see. And so Claude just began to paint. And that day he fell in love with painting outside. In French, you call that plein air painting. One way that I help myself to remember that word is that you get plenty of air when you paint outside. I can always remember that word, plein air. It changed Claude Monet's life.
I would love to do art outside.
Well, you could if you just... Gatsby? Gatsby!
Oh, sorry. I was just daydreaming about something.
That's okay. Come here, little buddy. If you like the plein air painting, you're going to love the rest of this story. The problem is we're out of time again.
Man, we're always out of time. This goes by way too fast.
I know.
Could you tell me just a little bit more?
I'm sorry I can't, but next time we get together, I'll tell you how Monet was able to get some of his paintings into the salon, but it didn't quite turn out the way he thought. So until I see you again, have I got a story for you?